Every single poker player, at some point or another, is going to have to decide whether or not they want to use GTO ranges preflop or exploitative ranges preflop. And understanding what they both are and when they are both very useful is extremely important. So let's talk about that today. Good morning, how we doing today? My name is James Sweeney, aka SplitSuit. Welcome back to another video. And today I want to talk about GTO versus exploitative ranges and really understand what these things are. And I think let's start by talking about definitions just to get that out of the way in case you're not really familiar with exactly what these things are. So GTO, short for Game Theory Optimal, is based upon a GTO solver, and it leverages computing power to derive the optimal strategy for all involved players. So it does make the assumption that every single player going forward is going to play totally perfectly both at this inflection point and all future ones, and that's really important to understand. Whereas exploitative is going to deviate from the GTO solution in an effort to maximize profit by capitalizing on strategic issues in your opponent's game. So if your opponents are typically too calling stationy or just too tight or whatever it is, you can use an exploitative range that takes advantage of those things that they're doing incorrectly, because you're saying, okay, my opponent is not going to play perfectly at this inflection point, or maybe this inflection point and all future ones, and as such I can adjust in this way to take advantage of that. Now of course humans just inherently cannot play perfect GTO, it's just not something that they can do. None of us are able to do it. So there's always going to be imperfection from our opponents. The question is exactly how imperfect and how far from a GTO solution is the average person you're playing against, or the specific person you're playing against as it may turn out. And I guess while we're here, let's also branch out the GTO discussion just a little bit, because if you're using the new GTO Ranges app from GTO Poker, you may have noticed that there are sometimes simplified GTO ranges and sometimes raw GTO ranges. And I think it's important to understand what both of these things are. So the simplified GTO methodology aims to, as the name implies, simplify the solver output into something that's more manageable. Since the raw GTO output is incredibly difficult to parse, since the solver is typically going to like you taking multiple actions with a single hand. This is called mixing, and while a computer can integrate a mix into a strategy perfectly, we as humans, again, kind of suck at that. So what we've done with the simplification method is gone through the GTO output, and we're looking to retain the solver's frequency suggestion, but simplify the actual hand selection choices. So instead of having to bring a D20 die with you to the poker table in order to discern exactly when and how often you should be opening a specific hand, the simplification is just going to make it more binary and just say, okay, always this hand, never that hand, and it makes life a little bit easier while still retaining to roughly 0.1% the actual GTO solver frequency in a given situation. So this is kind of important to understand that there is raw GTO and then there's also simplified GTO when it comes to preflop ranges. So essentially you have the raw GTO ranges, which are just direct output from the solver. Then you have the simplified GTO ranges, which take the raw data and essentially try to simplify it and smooth it out into something more manageable. Then we have the exploitative ranges. And just for the record, these are not based upon the GTO solver in the slightest. What happened is our coaches got together, we handcrafted these ranges from scratch, and then battle tested them in smaller online cash games and also live cash games. And they take factors like common player pool mistakes and frequencies and different rake structures and many other factors into consideration when selecting every single range. So with all that context out of the way, and with me being a very visual learner, let's open up the GTO Ranges app from GTO Poker and look at two of these ranges side by side so we can understand things more deeply. So let's take a situation where the cutoff open raises, folds to us in the big blind, and we're looking at our options. And we notice that the exploitative is offering a 9.5% 3-bet. And if we dig in a little deeper, we notice that the exploitative has a very clear depolarized shape with all the selected hands kind of mashed up in that upper left-hand corner, whereas the simplified GTO is polarized with some hands in the upper left-hand corner, like 10s plus and ace king, but also with hands ranging from queen 10 suited to king 6 suited to ace 3 suited being included as well. Now, this isn't always the case that the exploitative and the simplified GTO ranges are going to be so starkly different, but this kind of makes sense here, right? The exploitative ranges are used in simpler, softer games where the player pool makes a larger number of mistakes against 3-bets. Typically, they continue too wide and they 4-bet too infrequently. So why not depolarize, keep our 3-betting range nice and strong, and utilize our range edge post-flop? And then keeping in mind what we were talking about earlier in terms of the GTO model, The GTO ranges inherently assume that our opponents will not only 4-bet an appropriate amount of the time, but also play perfectly at all points going forward. Both when they face a 3-bet, if they call our 3-bet and we have to go post-flop, the GTO output is assuming they're going to play perfectly both now and later. So it's pretty much at this point that you have to answer the question, which one of these ranges should I use here? And the simple answer is this. Use the GTO ranges when you're playing in tougher games, and or when you have little to no information on your opponents and you're playing in non-micro, non-small stakes games. That's kind of when the GTO ranges are going to be the most useful. And as for the exploitative ranges, use those when you're playing in softer games, which is typically going to be micro to small online games or smaller live games, those kind of things. That's when the exploitative ranges are really going to shine. And just in general, the newer you are to poker, the more you should really just focus on the exploitative ranges anyway. They were really designed to keep you out of trouble and make you more profitable both pre-flop and by extension, post-flop as well. So hopefully you now have a better understanding on what these ranges are, where they come from, when they're best used, and which one you should be prioritizing using in your pre-flop game as well. And by the way, if you're interested in playing with all of our ranges, both GTO and exploitative, you can do so today by downloading the new GTO Ranges app from GTO Poker. Just look for it on the App Store or Google Play Store, download it, and give it a rip. And just for the record, even if you don't pay a single dime, you'll still get all of our open raising ranges, including the GTO ones, so definitely make sure to check that out if you haven't already. Again, look for it in your store or go to redchip.app in order to get more information and learn all about it, and also unlock the entire thing if you want all of our 3-bet ranges, 4-bet ranges, etc. And with all that said, if you have any comments or questions, please do not hesitate to let me know. Just leave a comment down below, and of course, if you enjoyed the video, a thumbs up would be massively appreciated as well. Otherwise, I'll see you guys back shortly with a brand new video, and in the meantime, good luck out there and happy grinding.